Andy Austin here with another chapter from The Rainbow Machine, Tales from a Neurolinguist's Journal by Andrew T. Austin. You can buy this on Amazon and leave a review, and that would be really appreciated. Oh, and I'd better just start mentioning this too. Do please click the like button and leave a comment. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm as I develop and build my YouTube empire. That's my new little project here. Right, this chapter is the television set chapter. Now this is compiled really, it's not quite a true story. It's a fabrication based around lots of different events that I kind of congealed together to make it like a single person. But actually, some of these were autobiographical events and some of these things were based on real people. But essentially, I crafted this story together about a guy who says he's a television set. The metaphor being that whatever channel he's on, he's essentially being told, you're on the wrong channel, and just try and change channel. What this was about is about identity and the problems of identity within therapy, and if you get labelled with a psychiatric diagnosis such as schizophrenia, people become what R.D. Laing referred to as a non-person. If I become diagnosed schizophrenic, I'm no longer a normal person. I'm a normal person who is schizophrenic, and very quickly I'm now just a schizophrenic. So if I protest something that you say, if I object to something you do, if I rail against an injustice that you represent, and you're a healthcare professional, I'm just being schizophrenic. My symptoms are now used against me in an oppressive way. So essentially, I'm not allowed to have a thought of my own. I'm not allowed to question anything, any aspect of reality. Because to question anything out loud is to challenge your version of reality, and therefore that is demonstration of my symptoms. And this is the problem about becoming a non-person. We are no longer valid to have a point of view or anything else. And so this is hugely problematic. Now there's a line that I used in the book, which I realised in reading it, I must have missed a chapter, because it's the thing about patting a balloon. Don't say to an occupational therapist about the colour of the balloon. And I realised there's no reference preceding this about patting balloons. So that's the one I want to explain. Now this is a line to an experience that I had in a psychiatric rehabilitation unit. On my first, I think it was my first day there, the first session, what it is a day centre. This is a prestige. It's a lovely place to work. It's lovely. The staff were lovely. Everything was really nice. It was just what they did. It was ridiculous. People would come in for a day, and some people are in for respite. So they've come in from home, where they've got home carers. They're all elderly, mentally ill people. So largely they're coming in from the community to give respite to them. And others, it's to give a structure to their week. So they don't live there. It's not a residential setting. On one of my first days there, first mornings there, I'm introduced to one of the occupational therapy groups. And one of these groups, literally, they would have people assembling wooden toys, like you just knock them together with a plastic hammer, like it's children's toys. And they would spend an hour assembling these bloody wooden children's toys, and at the end of the session they would break them apart and put them back in the box, and then they'd reassemble them the next week. That's the level we were at here. Nice people, the staff, nice people, but yeah. This is what I found. We've got 15 elderly schizophrenics sitting in a circle, and the occupational therapist has got them patting balloons to each other, and she's very excited by this game. And you've basically got 15 disinterested elderly people patting the balloons. One or two are enjoying themselves. Everyone else is like, we just got to do this. And that's what they did for about half an hour or so. What's the point? What are we doing this for? Now, in the meeting that day, I raised the question about why did you have 15 schizophrenics in a circle patting a balloon to each other? What's the therapeutic advantage that's been created here? And I was basically told, first of all, I thought it was a weird question. Who do I think I am to ask that question? But they do that because that's what's on the rota. Well, who made the rota? Well, you guys did. So why are you doing that? And then I thought I'd get a bit pedantic, which is the kind of stuff that used to get me earmarked very quickly for dismissal, because I don't fit the mindset. I noticed that your balloons were green and yellow. Is there a therapeutic advantage of a green balloon over a yellow balloon? And what would happen if you use a red balloon? Would a red balloon be better or worse? So I thought, let's just chunk it down. Let's find out what their reasoning, their thinking is here. But of course, people don't like it when you challenge the reasoning and the prevailing attitudes and the prevailing practices of an organisation. These are just members of staff that work there, but they now defend the organisation even if they think it's ridiculous themselves. It's crazy, but this is what people do. So I was very unpopular very quickly, and my employment there was terminated not long afterwards, to be honest. Maybe a few days. Here was what I asked. This was the bit that did it. What would happen? We'll just invent one of these patients. We'll call him John. What would happen if John refused to pout the balloon? What would you do? What if he said, "I'm not doing this," and he got up and left? What would happen? They would check he had his medication that morning. So I said, okay, so what we have here is a rehabilitation centre. This is a unit designed to stop people being schizophrenic, being mentally ill. And yet, if we go a survey countrywide today, it's Wednesday morning, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, how many people countrywide are sitting in a circle patting a balloon to each other? Not very many. Probably the only people doing that are schizophrenics in places like this. So, if we have a man who refuses to participate in a behaviour that is clearly a psychotic behaviour, and that would be a normal thing to do, a normal person would refuse to do this because it's just condescending, it's patronising, it's awful, and get up and leave, you would see that as symptomatic of illness. But if people comply with the insanity of this game, then they're being appropriate and they're being normal. This is what R.D. Laing called, you have to be insane to be considered sane within these institutions. And then if you do a sane act, that gets you marked as being somebody who has symptoms that needs to be medicated or treated or electroshocked in some way. And so if the guy said, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm going down the pub. Okay, pubs wouldn't have been open then, but that kind of stuff, you would medicate him. Well, yeah, because he's not being compliant. So now we don't have rehabilitation. What we have is enforced compliance with absolutely stupid stuff that's going on. But it gets more than that, because it's not just about the behaviour the person displays which challenges the organisation. It's who he's being. It's not what he's doing, it's who he's being. And herein lies one of the problems that I've seen so much in psychiatry, both in psychiatry, but also issues surrounding psychiatric patients and what they then encounter from other people. So if we just use the metaphor, and it was really just a metaphor of the television set, where it doesn't matter what channel he's broadcasting on, he's always on the wrong channel, and someone tries to adjust it. Look what we're doing as therapists. Somebody comes to us, and a lot of the NLP coaching, life coaching type people, they have this notion that no one's actually broken, everyone works perfectly fine, and you all have the resources within you that you could all need. Now, I think that's absolute nonsense, but I understand the ethos by which people are trying to promote that. When a client presents to a therapist, the therapist is basically saying you need to be different. When we do change work with somebody, we're using change work processes and techniques. We're telling the person, you're not okay being the way that you are, you need to be different. And some of those change work will happen at a behavioural level, some happen on an identity level. Yet simultaneously, we have a cultural backdrop that basically says we should have a radical acceptance of a person's identity, no matter how they perceive their identity to be. And so we've had the excesses that we've seen in recent years of, say, the non-binary community, and I'm going to identify as an elephant, that kind of shit. So what we have now is people who will claim that they can identify how they wish and demand rights and entitlements to that becomes a protected class of experience. Now, I don't have any particular view as to whether we should have protections of those classes of experience or not, but I just recognize that that is one of the things that is happening. Yet when it comes to mental health stuff, you don't have protections. In fact, what happens is the moment we subject you to psychiatry and diagnostic games, you now lose all entitlements and we get to adjust you how we wish, according to our prevailing beliefs and values and what we think is good and what makes us look good on our Facebook status updates in terms of what we then do. So now if I'm a person who goes to therapy, here's something that I risk happening. At the point of being, supposing I drink too much alcohol, and I'm a guy who goes to a lot of parties, and I'm a guy who has a lot of beer in the house. And at the moment, I'm just a guy who goes to parties. But I think, this is a bit out of control. I'm clearly drinking too much, and I've got the shakes in the morning, and I need to do something about this. But I can't because it's too difficult, so I'm going to go and see a doctor. Now, at the point I decide I see a doctor or therapist, I've now made a transition from a guy who goes to parties to being a guy with problem. And at the point I'm subjected to treatment process or diagnostic process, I can shift the identity. So I'm now a guy who goes to parties, and now I'm an alcoholic who has to go to meetings. There's a profound identity shift that can happen there. And that can happen in my mind as I make the phone call. But what happens if I don't wish to make that identity transition at all? I just want to be the guy that goes to parties who doesn't drink so much. And now everyone's trying to turn me into being the alcoholic who needs to go to meetings. Well, we find the same thing around mood. So I can be somebody, and this was me actually in my 20s. So lots of depression issues, lots of mood issues in my 20s. So I decided to go and get help. And the help I decided to go and get didn't help. Basically, people tried, didn't help me. And that's predominantly what drove me to do what I do today. The problem with that is that, so I'm somebody who tried to get help for what was mood disorder, but I end up with the diagnosis of being clinically depressed. That's on my medical records, and that now follows forward throughout my life. It affected my ability to get a mortgage. It affects my health insurance. I cannot get life insurance. Isn't that ridiculous? Because I got help for a problem, I can't get life insurance as a result of that. Now, if I hadn't have got help for the problem, then I could have got life insurance because it wouldn't be on my medical records that I'm clinically depressed. Now, even though I don't have the disorder anymore, if we want to call it a disorder, I still carry the identity. Not an identity I ever adopted. I never thought of myself as a depressive. I never thought of myself in an identity way. Just like I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, really like smoking, lung issues, all sorts of health issues, don't smoke anymore, kind of miss it. But I always liked smoking, but I never considered myself a smoker. I'm somebody who smoked cigarettes, but I never took on the identity role as a smoker. And so quitting, or just simply not smoking anymore, was very easy, because I wasn't quitting an identity role. When it comes to mental health stuff, you don't get permission to quit the identity role. Once you are labelled with that label, getting rid of it now is almost impossible to do. And that past can and will be used against you and in your future, whether you like it or not. One of the problems with therapy, of course, as well, is not only do we give somebody a reframe of their identity and have an imposition that you're not okay being the way that you are, we're going to make you different now, we're going to turn you into somebody else. We also market this, which is you can be the best you can be anything in your life, we can turn you into a person with superpowers. All the promises that essentially coaching, training, NLP, and all those kind of things of personal development like to sell, which basically all have the same message. You're not okay being you. You would be better being what we have designed you to be. When I first did my NLP training, all that, the practitioner course, I went to the bar, or met in the bar with some of the assistants, the assistant trainers, and these were people who were basically the inner circle around the celebrity trainer. And I realized very quickly when I arrived in the bar that I would not really enjoy these people's company, because there was just the degree of showing off was quite remarkable. And I had an experience that has only ever happened to me once. And I was working as a nurse at the time. And I was working at Southampton General Hospital. And important job. Lots of people do this kind of job. And it's most jobs are pretty important. It's the only time in my life anyone had ever ridiculed or poked fun at me for being a nurse. And it was one of the key lead assistants from the inner circle. And essentially the conversation went like this: so what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a nurse. And she snorted beer out of her nose. Now obviously there's alcohol involved, so it might be exaggerated states here. And the others it all went silent. And people said, you could do so much more. Have you considered doing your NLP trainers training? It's like, whoa, let me just stop you right there. So you're saying that being a nurse is not acceptable to you and that I could do so much more? Whoa. And I didn't really have the argument. I just kind of finished my drink at that point, and pretty much I went back to my hotel room. Because they demonstrated the mindset that I had seen so much in therapy and in psychiatry, which is you're not okay being you. You will be what we tell you to be, and we will if you don't adjust yourself to fit the identity role that we are giving you, then we will judge and make being you difficult. And that's one of the things that will happen. So now, if I'm a psychiatric patient, if I'm subjected, I have issues and I seek help, or help is forced upon me because of extreme behaviors, but I don't accept the diagnosis, I don't accept the sick role, I don't accept the role of being a psychiatric patient, I refuse to become a non-person, my life is going to be made very difficult until I'm compliant, because essentially then I'm being a non-compliant patient. I'm not complying with therapeutic and treatment protocols, and then that will be potentially used against me. And so there's stacks of power within culture and within society and within each individual that I would then encounter, who are basically holding my identity to be something that it's not inside me, and that my claim to my identity is not protected, and it doesn't have any entitlements to it. In fact, because I've been earmarked to be the patient, it's all taken away. So that's what that particular chapter is about. If you have experience of being labelled or being reframed to be someone that you're not, and that's on your medical records, do please share your story. On the Reddit, on the reddit.com website, which I know some people amazingly aren't familiar with, there's an anti-psychiatry subreddit. And I recommend have a look at some of the stories on the anti-psychiatry group, because there's lots of stuff on there written by people who've been through the system, people who are in the system, people who have been labelled and are now stuck. And they now have an additional problem. If they refuse to take their medication, their liberty can be taken away from them. And they don't have rights of trial. They don't have the rights of in law that would be protected. And essentially, after so many times their liberty is taken away, they lose all rights of appeal. This is the insane thing. You can literally be detained for years at a time and forcibly drugged against your will by psychiatrists, and there is no third-party intervention. You know why? Patient confidentiality. It all gets dressed up in a very nice professional way, and we can remove people from society. People tend to recover when the insurance payments run out, especially like in the US where things are insurance driven. In the UK, generally it's when the units are full and the police are dropping off more vulnerable people, and it's basically first one in, last one in, first one out, as they do the revolving door system, and back you go to the hostels or to the bench in the park. I'm interested to hear other people's stories. Do please click that like button and use the comment section. It really helps with my YouTube channel, and I really do appreciate the people who take time to watch my videos. I would like to thank you so much for your time and attention. I'll see you in the next video.